How's it going, everybody? Today we will be looking at the lives of the helmet snail, Cassis cornuta. And I'm excited to say I secured an interview with a real expert on these animals after the underwater footage. So stick around. The snail is large. It's about the size of a medicine ball. Here you can see it stuck into the sand. They do that quite a bit. This seems to be a defensive measure. This upper part of the shell is very sturdy and very hard. And here only the siphon is looking out of the sand so that they can breathe. And what's that? A sand dollar, a type of sea urchin, and it had been killed and eaten by Cassis. The Cassis, the helmet snails, are little reefs really. So here we have a cardinal fish, there is a dacilus, and here there is a small juvenile lionfish. They all live around that Cassis, especially when the Cassis lives in the sand. They are often small little reefs. Now, this is the natural reef, natural speed of the Cassis, so they are quite fast for mollusks, for snails, and what they do in the Dauin, Dumaguete area where I mostly dive, I find a lot of them in the sand. They would scout the sand for these sand dollars, I believe. And this one probably tried to get away from me. I don't think they have very good vision anywhere, but they're definitely sensitive to sand vibration. So this is a 4x time lapse, and here we see one of these sand dollars probably realizing that a deadly Cassis was near it, and it took off and it ran away. So yet another indication that these sand dollars are their prey. Again, we have a time lapse 4 times. There's my friend Laura in the back. The Cassis is moving around quite a bit. Again, we see there's a small anemone on it. Before there was a wreath around it. So in these rather barren seagrass or sandy areas, they act like little reefs. Here we have another individual with a lot of algae growing on it. And what's that? Well, there's another sand dollar. So that seems to be what they're feeding on in the part of the world where I'm diving, but this doesn't mean that they feed on these everywhere.
Okay, so the question now is, why is this interesting snail acting like this? And I have a very good friend, Miss Lala Calle, and she is a graduate student specializing in this particular snail. So thank you for joining, Lala. What was your graduate work about, and what were the things you found out?
So thank you for inviting me, Dr. Klaus. My research is about this particular marine snail, which is the Cassis cornuta. Locally, we call it bujong, and it is usually found in sandy substrate and, of course, in coral reef areas. Anecdotal reports say that they are found deeper waters, but there were observations in shallow areas like in Masbate or where you've observed them there in Dumaguete. So my research is about looking into the behavior of this particular snail. There is lacking research on the biology and ecology of this snail. So it was interesting to see how it feeds on sea urchins or this echinoderms. And I also looked into its prey preference and activity pattern throughout the 24-hour cycle. So that's my research all about.
Yeah. So are you surprised that they seem to be feeding on sand dollar sea urchins in the Dumaguete area? What I've observed and filmed?
Before I've encountered this snail, I read some papers on congeneric species. It's the Cassis tuberosa found in other areas in the world, in the Caribbeans. And then I've read they're feeding on sand dollars. So I'm not surprised because I think they have a very varied diet. So uh, maybe it's affected with what's available in the area. So they feed on sand dollars or any kind of echinoderms that is maybe similar in morphology, in characteristics, like it's not very fast in escaping, like other echinoderms. So yeah, I'm not really surprised that it was feeding on sand dollars in Dumaguete and then sea urchins in Bolinao.
Yeah, so you could almost speculate that they're adapting to different prey types in different environments.
Um, I haven't tested that, but we could hypothesize it that it is feeding what's available in the area because of course you could see that it's a big cassis or they've already grown, meaning they're surviving and thriving in the area with the food that's available. So if they're not feeding on it, and then maybe that particular snail wouldn't exist in the area.
Yeah, so this is really much more behavioral complexity than most
Yeah.
people would really attribute to a snail, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Another question I have from my recordings, very often when I would set down the camera in front of them, they would retract their mantle into the shell. They would almost be a little bit surprised, right? And they would stop moving. So given that, what are they afraid of? Who would be their natural predators other than, free diving fishermen?
Yeah, that's correct. So, in Calaguas or in Camarines Norte, it's the northern part in Luzon, facing in the Pacific. We went there and then we've discovered shells also of cassis with holes. So we asked fisher folks, um, is there a predator there or are they feeding on it? And then the fishermen told me that they fish it or they harvest it and they eat it. So in my knowledge, yes, it could be just humans, or at the same time there may be a bigger mollusk such as octopus that would feed on this particular snail. And if you have noticed that this snail is very big, it has a very thick shell. So it's very difficult for another organism to feed on it without breaking the shell into pieces or making a hole. So possibly a very efficient predator such as maybe octopus could feed on this particular snail. And I think they are, yes, very sensitive to vibrations because they are highly fished or harvested by humans for consumption and for ornamental assemblages. And because of that, they're maybe through evolution, they're very sensitive to that kind of vibrations and maybe the sound of the boat or something drilling somewhere near the area.
Yeah. So if an octopus would attack them, probably the vulnerable areas would be from below, where the mantle, the soft part,
Yeah.
enters the shell. So this is probably also the reason why they submerge under the sand very often, correct? To protect this
Yeah,
part.
it could. Yes, so there are papers about gastropods and marine snails that show that they burrow in the sand. So they burrow in the sand, they cover themselves with sand. So it possibly could be for protection, um, to avoid predators and also for resting. So
Yeah.
my research looked into that, and I think one of our findings is that it's mostly resting when it's under the sands, but it could be true only to adults. And as you've mentioned, it could be protection for the juveniles.
Very interesting. Thank you very much for joining. I think all questions regarding Cassis should be answered now. If not, contact me. I can forward the questions to Lala. Thank you again so much, and talk to you soon.